release of Nosferatu, we now have 4 films in the filmography of Robert Eggers. Robert Eggers, who has now become one of my favorite filmmakers. He's one of these sort of cornerstone filmmakers in Hollywood that when he is releasing a new movie or working on a new film, you can bet your ass it's going to be one of my most anticipated films of that particular year. He's just a filmmaker that has established himself as being one of the best in Hollywood right now. One of the best younger filmmakers. A guy who's able to craft these movies that feel very practical, set in their time periods, in a way that feels very grounded and very natural to the worlds and the times that Robert Eggers is setting his stories in. He's somebody who loves the history and the backgrounds of the countries that he sets his films in, or the time periods, and he makes it as realistic to those times as humanly possible. His films are both terrifying in sort of ways, right? They're very much horror films in a different sort of definition of that term. They're Robert Eggers horror films. They're films that terrorize you in a very different kind of way. But they're also films that contain incredible performances, visuals, and just some of the best direction you're going to get in modern day Hollywood. In this video, I'm going to be ranking the 4 movies from worst to best. Now, yeah, of course, worst to best kind of implies that there is a worst. And of course, there is a movie of these 4 that I prefer to watch. I prefer to rewatch the least, that I go back and watch the least amount. But of course, I love all 4 of these films. They're all damn near close to being 5 out of 5s, particularly the top 2 on this list. Particularly the top 2, which I think are 2 of the best films of the last decade. But yes, I love all 4 of these films, and let's get into it. Let's start breaking down these top 4. The Witch, also known as The Vitch, because it's 2 V's. You see what they did there? Very creative. Was Robert Eggers' first movie. It's a very small-budget, low-key indie horror film starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Ralph Ineson and a bunch of other people, and it's about this small family that gets sent away from their community, and they have to go build a life out in the wilderness. And while they're there, some weird shit starts to happen, and they come into contact with a witch. And this is very much a slow burn, dark horror story about this family. It's a movie that, like I said before, is very much set in the times. Robert Eggers has these characters speak in this older, broken English. And you have Ralph Ineson, who's got the greatest voice in the history of man. Seriously, watch Game of Thrones, or play Final Fantasy 16, or watch the new Fantastic Four movie where he's going to be playing Galactus. It's incredible. And you have a young Anya Taylor-Joy who's playing this young character, and it's very believable, her sort of story arc that she's going into, this downfall that this character kind of takes throughout the film. I think this is his best film when it comes to the actual scare part. Like, I think this is his best, you know, sort of regular horror film when it comes to setting up these horror sequences and building this scary sort of vibe. This is definitely the film that I would call the scariest of his. It's darkly filmed, and the shots are really reliant on the natural lighting and sort of the whole aspect of this little, like, sort of farm that they're living on and the woods. It all just feels eerie and irky, and you always feel uncomfortable while watching this movie, all the way up until its conclusion, which is definitely, I don't want to say satisfying, but it's something. The Vitch is just a very good movie. I've always really loved it, and it's one of the best directorial debuts ever, even if it's, at this moment, his worst movie. Nosferatu is his brand new movie, and I'm ranking it number 3 here, which is a little disappointing. I thought when this was coming out, I was hoping it would be my favorite of his, and of course, it's not, unfortunately, but it is a phenomenal, phenomenal horror remake of the original classic, a film about Count Orlok, this evil, like, epitome of evil, this vampire who has come and is sort of haunting, in a weird way, this husband and wife, and they have to deal with that. It's a movie that's very erotic in a way, right? You have Lily Rose Depp giving this really out there performance. You have Bill Skarsgård giving this extremely out there performance as Count Orlok. There's a lot of great stuff happening in this film. Amazing filmmaking, some of the best cinematography, probably the best cinematography of his whole filmography. Nicholas Hoult giving an absolutely mesmerizing performance here. I just think a lot of this film is a little, there's too much yapping in this one, and I feel like I'm the only person on the internet that complained about that, but a lot of Eggers' other films, they didn't rely on yapping, right? They were relying on a lot of, you know, sort of scenic stuff, the cinematic value of it all. It felt like Denis Villeneuve's filmmaking, whereas this movie, there's a lot of explaining. There's a lot of them looking into the camera and telling you over and over and over what's going on, and it kind of took me out of the movie, and it made it drag a little more than usual. But my god, some of the horror sequences in this thing are amazing. Count Orlok is an incredible character, just unforgettable sequences, and what a performance from everybody involved. Willem Dafoe also, amazing. Speaking about Willem Dafoe and being amazing, I mean The Lighthouse. What can I say about The Lighthouse that hasn't already been said? This is one of the most ballsy movies of the last decade, a film that is shot in this really sort of contained black and white to really make it feel like an older movie about these 2 guys that are watching a lighthouse, and they slowly lose their freaking minds. It's a movie that was not appreciated enough when it came out. I mean, this should have been a massive Oscars hit, and it just wasn't. You have 2 of the greatest performances of our modern times, with Willem Dafoe giving maybe my favorite performance ever, and Robert Pattinson not far behind him. I mean, they are electric in this film, working off of each other and just crafting these characters that are both lovable, but also just, frustrating and loud and psychotic and hilarious. This is another one of his films that does the horror thing very, very differently. This movie can be scary at times. It can be hypnotizingly scary because it isolates you. It makes you feel alone, like you are trapped on this island with these characters. And that can be very daunting, and a lot of the themes and the things this movie's trying to say are, in the same way, kind of terrifying. But this movie could also be hilarious and fun and just incredibly exciting to watch. It's visually the most ambitious of any of his films. The way this movie's shot, the way things move, the aspects, how it also grounds itself in its time period with the English and the way the characters speak. It's a very, very ambitious movie that I really give Robert Eggers credit for even attempting to make. It's an absolute masterpiece of a movie that I think everybody should go check out if you haven't watched it already. If you're kind of like thrown off by the black and white and just the visual style, give it a shot. It's definitely a movie that's worth your time. The Northman is easily my favorite film from Robert Eggers, and I know a lot of people would rank this thing last, and a lot of people have some mixed opinions about it, so maybe it's a little bit ballsy of me to rank this number one. But The Northman is a film that, even though even Robert Eggers doesn't like it, I think it's a phenomenal, epic Viking revenge story. This is the one Robert Eggers film that really just completely captivated me while I was watching it, and it swept me off my feet, and I felt from start to finish, it was just about a perfect film. The Northman is a very simple story. It's a very simple movie in itself, right? It's a movie about this guy, this Viking dude, who something bad happens, and he goes on this revenge quest to kill the people that did the bad things to him. It's very, very simple. Very similar if you were watching, when it came out at the time, Vinland Saga, an amazing anime. I actually think Vinland Saga is a little bit stronger than this, but a very similar concept of this long-lasted epic revenge quest. And it's a movie that works so, so well. Obviously setting his story in this Viking time period, he does what he always does in all of his films, and he grounds it to the reality of that time period. The characters talk like these older style Vikings. The set design, the practicality of it all, it grounds you in those time periods, and it makes you feel like you're actually seated watching a moment in history. The actual violence here is all done extremely well. Alexander Skarsgård as the lead is awesome. The villain, the bad guy, and how it kind of goes through that arc, and there's the different twists and the turns with the mother and everything going on. It's just constantly revealing new sort of legs of this story that keep you on the edge of your seat. Anya Taylor-Joy's here giving a really fun performance. It's a brutal movie in the violence that it depicts. It's a harsh movie when it comes to depicting the realities of revenge and what it does to a person. Just a beautiful movie, and as somebody who loves Vikings and thinks we don't get enough of these large-scale Viking epic movies, it was my kind of shit. And that's what makes The Northman easily my favorite Robert Eggers movie. It's the movie that I go back and rewatch the most, and I just think it's his perfect film. And I know there were a lot of controversies that the studio kind of took over the cut of the film, and he's not really happy with what they did. I am. Good job, studio. You did a good job because this movie kicks ass. Sometimes studio interference works out. Sometimes, I guess. They probably should have interfered. Todd Phillips on Joker Filet of Doo-Doo. Yep, you're catching another stray Joker every video. You're catching at least one a video. Stupid freaking movie. That movie sucked. Didn't it? Joker 2 sucked. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know your rankings of Robert Eggers down below. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one.